Welcome to another edition or live edition of House of Horns. My name is Victor Corona, aka Victor Producer, and joining me as always is Sports Illustrated NFL staff writer Gilbert Manzano. Gilbert, how are you doing today? Are
I'm
you
doing
ready to
well.
talk? Are you ready to talk some Rams breakout players?
Yeah, that's actually why I'm excited for the show. Because we're gonna talk breakout player candidates, and we tried talking about it maybe like a month ago, and then it seems like a stretch because you don't see the guys in training camp. You don't see them in preseason. Now we have 2 games of preseason. We've seen training camp. We've seen even joint scrimmages with the Chargers and the Cowboys twice, and there should be another one against the Texans on Thursday. So yeah, it's a good time to get some breakout candidates, and we're gonna eventually start to in a bit soon for the engagement question. But also very exciting because we're gonna have my former colleague, a former
Yes.
teammate, Adam Grosbard, Rams beat reporter for the OC Register Southern California News Group. So Adam has all the nuggets and the insight on the LA Rams, and Adam, has been covering the team closely on a daily basis for the last 2 years. When I left the beat after the 2022 season, Adam stepped in and doing a kick-ass job out there at the beat for those who register.
Yeah, he's been doing a good job. I've been following some of the stuff that he's been writing about, and we'll get into some of those notes. I can't wait. I mean, he's been on the ground there. Hopefully, we get to ask him if it's the last time
Mm.
that they'll be in Simi Valley at Cal Lutheran. If he's expecting to go back, the plan is to for the Rams to be in Woodland Hills after they get back from this trip to Houston. So we'll ask him about that. We'll ask him about everything that has to do. We also, Gilbert, I want to get, since we have a little bit of time, kind of get into some over unders. I kind of want to I want to ask you about those over unders on player stats. I have some projections from Mike Clay from ESPN. And so we'll go back. I'll give you some numbers in terms of what the some of the guys like Stafford and Kyron Williams and Puka did last year, and we'll go over Mike Clay's projections and get your thoughts of whether they'll have over under stats, whether they'll go over or under those projected stats, Gilbert.
Yeah, why not? I like that, and see who does well, who does not, and just a quick promo. And I know people already have been watching. Is if you want to know about who's going to do well and who's not going to do well, Eric Williams, a friend of the show, or Eric D. Williams to be accurate, from
Mhm.
Fox Sports. There, I always want to say Fox Sports Deportes because it just sounds cool, but it's regular,
Yeah.
just regular Fox Sports. For Eric D. Williams, he joined us on Compass on the Beat on our Lunes live show with Fernando and myself, and when we had Eric talk about the Rams on House of Horns, this program right here, he was very optimistic about the Rams. And I wanted to ask him again a month later, now that we've seen training camp, now that we've seen preseason. He still feels the same way, but go get that insight from Eric D. Williams on the House of Horns channel and also on Compas on the Beat. You get them both places here on the network.
Yeah, and that was a really good clip there. I think it was about 8 or 9 minutes, and he gave you guys a lot of information on there. So make sure you check it out if you haven't yet. But Gilbert, let's head over and go ahead and ask the engagement question. Why we're here. Go ahead and get it started, so that way people can kind of chime in into what our theme of the show is today.
Yeah, don't be shy. Ask any questions or share any thoughts, or you just want to just say, go Rams. That's fine too. Whatever you want to throw in the comments, as long as it's respectful and football related. Well, we talk about some random stuff here, so we're okay with that. But just want people to get going in the comments. So for the engagement question of the week, breakout players. Which breakout player is gonna? I guess I want to just keep it to one player. Just give me one name. Who will be the Rams breakout player in 2024? That's what the banner says. Not which players. Who will be the Rams breakout player in 2024? And it's actually really a tough one because I'll give you some lists here. The list here: Davis Allen, second year tight end. Byron Young, second year edge rusher. He kind of had somewhat of a breakout year because he was surprising last year, but I think Byron Young is set for something bigger. Jared Verse, a rookie. Braden Fisk, a rookie. Xavier Smith, a roster bubble guy. You never know. Last year, nobody saw DeMarcus Robinson, so I'm going to throw him in there. Jordan Whittington seems like he could be either DeMarcus Robinson or Puka Nakul. They're both very good options right there. Blake
Yep.
Corum, a rookie there. I want to see what he does with Kyron Williams, how you split the carries there. We could ask Adam Grosbard about that. I feel like it's kind of an underrated storyline, but we ask him. Maybe a guy like Alec Jackson, who has been up and down, took the job last year, and I think he did a good job, but maybe he has kind of some kind of a big steep, like a big rise, like Kevin Dotson did a year ago. When you throw in a Jonah Jackson to his left side, maybe he does better. That's why I threw him in there. Steve Avila going from left guard to center. I saw him practice today. Or yesterday. He was already going back to left guard, cross training there. And then
Mm-hmm.
maybe Cameron Curl. I know he got paid in free agency, but I feel like nobody really knew Cameron Curl. People did, but not. You got to be like a die-hard football fan to know Cameron Curl if you're outside the DC area. And then Bo Limmer, or is it Lemire or Limmer? I think it's Limmer.
Yeah, Bo Limmer.
Bo Limmer, the rookie center, has been making waves. He got some reps there with the first team when Steve Avila went over back to his old position. So, yeah, a bunch of names there. Whoever you feel the strongest, let us know in the comments in the live chat. If you're watching the replay, don't be shy either. Let us know because we're always going back in the comments.
Yeah, and tell us why. Also, Gilbert, I think you have a little bit of a, I guess the way you do it is you say it has to be a player who's been in the league under 3 years. I
Yeah.
think that's kind of your way of,
Did I
you know.
get one in? I think Mary Jackson's over 3 years, so maybe I should take him off there.
No, but I mean, hey,
And
everybody. But
Cameron
I think
Curl.
for you, Cameron Curl, you know, those two guys. But in terms of the other guys, I think I've given you my pick. It's Davis Allen, and I've said why. I thought it was just kind of before we get to news and notes here. Um, it was interesting when I was kind of doing research on you know uh the Mike Clay projection. He had Tyler Higbee with like 65 receptions, and I'm like, well, he's
Whoa.
not supposed to be back.
Yeah.
I think he did this back in May, and it
Mm.
was weird because right when I did the research, he had updated his projections, and he still had not changed the numbers on Higbee. So the numbers for Davis Allen's were super low. So I think he needs to make that adjustment again, and we'll talk about it when we do the over unders for the season on some of these players. But Gilbert, let's jump over to news and notes. We'll have Adam Grosbard join us in about 20 minutes or so. So let's get through this real quick for news and notes for this week. So first off, Gilbert, right off the bat, the Rams wave and they had an injury settlement with cornerback Jerry Jacobs, who they brought in about 3 weeks ago to replace Darius Williams. I think this caught a lot of people by surprise because a lot of people, when they didn't see him play last week against the Chargers, everybody just figured he's making the team. So this caught a lot of people by surprise. We'll ask Adam about this, but I don't know about you, but it caught me by surprise for sure.
I guess maybe they're expecting guys to get healthy, and that's the thing. Because Jerry Jacobs, he joined the team more like 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks
Yeah,
ago. I forget, but obviously you want to have more depth there, and then injury settlements are a little tricky too. So I'm not too surprised, I think it's more of good news that maybe they're expecting Darius Williams to be okay. They're maybe they're banking on what they've seen from Tre'Davious White to be healthy. Obviously, you lost Darren Kendrick; he's not coming back, and maybe I don't know, maybe Kobe Durant, the breakout of 2022, who has been very quiet the last I guess, year and a half to give him benefit of the doubt. But yeah, I'm not too surprised about it.
yeah. And like I said, we'll talk. I mean, that also opens up a spot for somebody to, that's on the 53-man bubble to kind of emerge. I can't wait to talk to Adam about this because I think there's some names out there with the Rams in the secondary that I think we need to keep our eye on, especially in this game against the Texans. That I know not everybody plays, and that usually means that if you don't play, that means you make the team. But there are some guys on the bubble that might need to earn a spot there. So that'll be something to ask Adam about. Next up is Matthew Stafford and Jonah Jackson, as you talked about, return to practice. Stafford participated in an 11-on-11 scrimmage on Tuesday, so that's good news. We talked about the hamstring injury a little bit, and I said after the game against the Chargers, Gilbert, that I would just put him in bubble wrap and just, not even. It'll be interesting. I want to ask Adam if he expects Stafford to play in that joint practice tomorrow against the Texans. If I was the decision maker, I would say, you know what, just go ahead and skip that. You just need him 100% healthy because he's an older player. You need to make sure that he gets plenty of rest before that game against the Lions.
Yeah, no, first of all, it's good news that Matthew Stafford is, already participating, even going from 7-on-7 to 11-on-11. That's good news there. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with him in Houston and with the scrimmage. But maybe they give him a couple series and get him out there very quickly. You never know. Obviously because these guys don't play in the preseason, you want to stay, fresh and rhythm. And we do remember that Stafford had a rough scrimmage against the Chargers. Uh, he was doing well in that. I think it was the second Cowboys one, but that's where he got hurt. The first Cowboy scrimmage was so. So maybe he wants to pick up where he left off in that second Cowboy scrimmage and to throw him out there. But again, that's a reminder he got hurt in the other scrimmage, so maybe you don't want to do it. So yeah, that'll be a good question to ask Adam there. But overall, it's just good news to see him out there because hamstrings can be very tricky. And I know that Matthew Stafford doesn't rely on being athletic and mobile, but you still got to move around the pocket a little bit to
Yep.
extend plays, and you got to have the hammies there correct and ready to go, especially at his age, being older. So you don't want that. And then seeing Jonah Jackson come back too was big. He got lost early in the training camp and in the summer, and then when he is the new acquisition in free agency, new team, new offensive line, you want to get him as many reps as you can before the season. So it's good news that they're out there. What, like maybe 2 weeks now before the season? It's
Yeah.
getting very close, Victor.
Yeah, it is. And talking about more injuries in terms of some of, with all the injuries that have been happening, some players have been taking advantage of it. And one of those guys is rookie center Bo Limmer, as he got first team reps at center, Gilbert. Limmer has played 94 snaps this preseason, all at center, and hasn't allowed a pressure in 53 pass blocking snaps. He's been
Mm.
okay in the run game. And then also, tackles Alaric Jackson and Rob Havenstein are still being held out of practice. So, with all that said, Gilbert, one last thing before I get your reaction to this: injuries on the offensive line have now forced Rams to cross train their linemen during practices, with backup tackles Joe Nobum and Warren McClendon Jr. switching sides. And as you talked about earlier as well, Steve Avila is not playing at his old position of left guard because of it. So, is this a good thing, a bad thing? Are you what are your thoughts on everything going on with the Rams offensive line?
Well, I won't be the negative Nancy for the show because I get a little negative sometimes, as people know watching or listening on this channel here.
Yeah,
But when you have Stafford and you have Jonah Jackson back at practice, it looks like it's all trending in the right direction. So maybe Jackson and Havenstein, Alaric Jackson, the left tackle, and Havenstein, the right tackle. Maybe they're being cautious with them, and let's hope they're going to be available for week one. So if that's the case, I'm okay with experimenting right now because you never know what's going to happen during the
yeah,
season. So you want to figure out what's your, I guess, when things are going crappy, what's going to be your lineup. And if you feel like Bo Limmer is ready to be the center, and you could have some flexibility with Steve Avila going back to his old spot, that will definitely help you out because you have Joe Noteboom too as well to be the tackle. So it's good that these guys could have played multiple positions, Avila and Noteboom, and then you have a guy who's emerging and rookie, Bo Limmer. So these are all good signs. And I even said to Eric on Compass on the Beat, like, one day I like the Rams and one day I don't like them.
yeah,
And when I don't like them is when I see a bunch of injuries and I'm getting flashbacks to 2022 when this offensive line was just decimated. Now you're kind of having a good backup plan. Like, obviously it's not your ideal offensive line, but though that starting five, you know, it's not the worst. It could maybe get you by, especially if you have a good ground game. If you're able to at least block it up front and the interior and help out, and you could just give it off to Corum and Williams, then I think Stafford could be okay behind that line.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, it always helps to be able to move your offensive lineman around. We've seen Joe Newbone be able to play everywhere on this offensive line, whether it's guard or tackle. You need guys like that who can they can be swing tackles. McClendon Jr., as we talked about, he's been playing really well in the preseason, and also I've heard great things about him during training camp as well. And then you have a surprise in Bo Limmer, and you know, th- it's not a hard decision. I think if everybody's healthy, you go with Avila at center, but it gives you options, Gilbert. Like, hey, you can move some guys around, and having one thing that we haven't seen with the Rams, at least since we had this show, is them having so much depth. Because when we started, it seemed like everybody got hurt, and then that was our number one question going into last year was what happens with this offensive line now that if you have guys that can play different positions, and that's a position of depth now, like that is huge for the Rams going forward. So to be able and then to be able to find a guy like in the late rounds in a Bo Limmer at center, that is huge as well, Gilbert.
Yeah, that'd be crucial, and we'll see how this
Yeah,
2024 draft class does because it's hard to top what 2023 did. Obviously, with Puka Nakua being the main guy there, and you got Byron Young and Kobe Turner, but if you get like Jerry Verse and Braden Fisk to do well, and then you get a guy like a Bo Limmer came out of nowhere, that's what made that class good. That you got some fifth round pick that stepped up. So Davis Allen was in that, Steve Avila was in that. So obviously,
yeah.
maybe you could have those two guys in the defensive front. You could have Bo Limmer, maybe a Jordan Whittington. I'm trying to remember all the rookies, but like it's hard to top
Tyler
that.
Day. I
Tyler
mean, there's
Davis, but if you
yeah.
get depth out of it, and I know some people weren't happy with Eric saying this team doesn't have that much depth. I'm with Eric. I think I need to see more depth here. But if guys like that step up, maybe the depth concerns won't be a thing, and maybe people could make jokes in the comments.
Yeah, and that's where it comes in. I mean, I'm with Eric on that. I mean, he's right. I mean, if you look at the secondary, we don't know. That's why I asked about, I was kind of surprised by Jerry Jacobs, and that's why I want to ask Adam about this and see what his thoughts are on this secondary. I mean, yes, you have, the guys who are going to play the start position in Quinn Lake, and then you have Kobe Durant, you have Russ Yeast, guys like that. But, if anybody gets hurt, you know, we don't know what the status is of Darius Williams. We are all assuming that because they released Jerry Jacobs, that Darius Williams should be nearby. He should be good to go soon. So I'm with you in terms of what Eric said there. Gilbert, let's go ahead and get to. I want to get these over unders before we bring on Adam Grosbard here.
Yeah.
So let's move on. Actually, we got a comment here from Steve on. He said, "What's up, guys? Currently driving home from Vegas while listening to House of Horns." So that's
Hey.
pretty cool.
Okay, so
Um,
you got it on the Bluetooth speaker there, Steve. And hopefully you're not typing. Maybe you're the passenger, but stay safe out there.
Yeah, it's been crazy with our live shows lately, Gilbert. Either on Compas, we had somebody who was listening to us or watching us on at an In and Out, and then we had another. I think it was it what's his name? Was He was crossing the border. He was waiting in
Oh
line.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so it's been crazy seeing people type in where they've been at. Then we have Angel says, which Rams guys do you recommend for fantasy besides Puka? What do you think, Gilbert?
You know, this one's tough, but I seen Kyron Williams. It's not a surprise, but Kyron Williams would be a pick, but I
Yeah,
seen him as high as the second round, and I'm like, I just get worried about his injuries, and he's gonna be
yeah,
very productive, but he's a small running back, but it's also like Dewan Achan, who's also gonna be very explosive for the Dolphins, but also a small running back could get hurt. So second seems a little high for me, but obviously that's the next big name there. Angel. I'm trying to think, maybe this could be a year where Cooper falls a lot and you could grab him somewhere and you can just take a chance on him and maybe just okay, people are forgetting about him and you go and get him. Like a lot of times these veteran wide receivers that you're tired, not tired of seeing, but you see them and it's kind of like, it's not as fun as Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. You grab those guys in the second or third round. But last year, Mike Evans, like, who saw that coming? He balled out
Yeah.
in his ninth, 10th year. So, if this offense is explosive, maybe take a chance on Cooper. I honestly don't know what round, Victor. Maybe we could answer that, but maybe
Yeah.
just watch out for those veteran wide receivers that just people forget about.
Yeah, I would target him in the fourth or fifth round if he's available there. And we'll go over his over under where we expect him to do. I'm very interested to see how this offense kind of if it's one sided like we saw last year with Puka, or if it's a little bit more balanced. I think the other thing too is you want to make sure you handcuff if you draft Kyron Williams that you
Yeah.
handcuff with Blake Corum. So make sure you pick up Blake Corum in the late rounds, somewhere in the 12 to 13th round, somewhere in there, because not a lot of people are going to draft him. So you want to make sure he's one of the handcuffs that I'm trying to get. Late in drafts is Blake Corum.
Yeah, I would definitely feel a lot better. I have Blake Corum and I drafted Kyron Williams in the second round, but I think he's going to have another fine season, especially the way he was just running the football. And I think he had maybe the best yards per no, he had a very high yards per carry average, but it was something insane. And he played very they didn't play the whole season, but like if he averaged the same thing for 17 games, he probably would have had the rushing title this last year. So I'm not saying stay away from Kyron. I just get worried about the injuries. But to Victor's credit and to his point, Blake Corum will be the guy to grab there.
Yeah, and then Angel said he last year I drafted Puka because of Gilbert. So
Oh,
there you
really?
go.
Wow, thank you, Angel.
Yeah,
Show that to some of the doubters and the haters who say I don't know football, like Dan and
yeah.
Dago.
And we got our guy, Extreme Chef, who now goes by Don Corleone. Evening, guys. This is a stream from Detroit. So
Hey, okay.
glad to have him back again. So that was
Thank you for
awesome.
explaining yourself there because I didn't recognize it, but now I will.
Yeah,
The Godfather.
the Godfather there. So it's good to have him. All right, Gilbert, let's get to Mike Clay's projections, and I want your over-unders. Okay, Gilbert? So we're going to start off with Matthew Stafford here. He has him throwing for 4,065 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. What says you? So my question to you is: will Matthew Stafford over under 4,000 yards?
Mm, I
He
will go. I will go over. I say he's healthy, and I'm guessing last year he did he
Yeah,
get it,
15
Victor?
games. So this is according to Clay. He's saying that this is going to be in 15 games. The reason he
Ah,
projected this is because if you remember this last year, he missed the Packers game and then he
yeah.
missed the 49ers game because they had already clinched the playoff spot.
And did he surpassed 4,000, right?
No. So
No,
he
really.
ended up with 3,965 yards,
Wow, so
24
close.
touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. So you say you're going over 4,000
I'm gonna
yards.
go over, but I don't feel good about it because they are like that. Now that I think about it, they do. The last year they schemed very well on the running game, and they're running a little more heavy. So I could see that again. But when you get that close, you know what? I'm gonna say over.
Okay, next one. Over under 25 touchdowns for Matthew Stafford. Last year
Ooh.
he finished with 24. Mike Clay has him projected for 23.
I'll go under because I think Blake Corum and Kyron could steal a bunch there in the red zone and the goal line.
Okay, got it. All right, moving on to running back Kyron Williams. Last season he finished with 1,144 yards and 12 touchdowns. Okay,
Mm.
so over under. Let's do 1,100. No, let's do 1,200. Over under.
Man, it's just I keep going back to the injuries. I gotta see him healthy, and they also got Blake Corum. He's about to go. This is year 3. He actually could be it's the contract year because he is not a first round pick. So I say he plays his butt off. I think he tops his career highs. Obviously, you see Blake Corum behind you. You got to get on the contract. People talk about your injury history there. So and also last year it was very low. I think for the rushing title there, I'm blanking who got it, but it wasn't that high. It wasn't like a CJ 2K kind of season. So I'll say he'll compete for 1,200 yards and get it, and he may compete for the rushing title.
Yeah, and he did it, minus 4 games from what I remember. If
Yeah,
I'm, yeah,
and he's
so
still like
that
top
was
five in rushing, I think.
right, exactly. So that was really impressive. Over under in total touchdowns. He had 12 last season, 10 rushing,
Ooh.
2 receiving. 12 is the number again. Over under 12 total touchdowns.
All right, he'll get the yards, but I'll go under. I think this is where Blake Corum hurts him a little bit on the roster. He'll take some of the touchdowns.
All right, I'm gonna move quickly now to the receivers. Puka Nakua last season finished with 105 catches, 1,486. My first question over under is: does he go over 1,500 yards receiving for Puka?
Ooh, that's a lot. I think he's going to be very good again. I think he's going to flirt with that. But you know what? I'm gonna tone it down a bit because I really like Puka Nakua. He looked awesome every time I went out there for camp before he got hurt. But I'm gonna go under. That's a still very high number. But even if he gets 1,300, 1,400, that's very good. But 1,500 is very high.
Yeah, and Mike Clay has them going for 89 catches for 1,242. So
Ah,
way low. All right. In terms of catches, let's set the over under at 95 catches. He has them going at 89. He finished with 105. So I figure I split
ooh.
the difference. So 95 catches over under.
Yeah, I think he's become Stafford's guy, and Stafford likes to feed his guy like a Cup, Calvin Johnson, guys like that. So I think Puka will get another. I think he'll be a guy who'll be consistently getting 100 receptions a year.
All right, let's move over to Cooper Cup. Last season, he finished with 59 catches, 737 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So Mike Clay has him going for. Let me make sure. 78 catches and 1,000 yards. So let's set the over under at 75. Does he for catches over under 75?
Oof. I'll say under. I
Okay.
think now being the number two guy, doing a little bit of the dirty work, it might be a little lower stat wise lower season for Cooper Cup.
Okay, 7. I'm gonna set the over under at 850 yards for Cooper Cup.
Uh, I'll say under because again, he has to compete with Puka Nakua. You have Kyron Williams, you got Blake Corum, and it's a lot of weapons there for Matthew Stafford. So it's still you get 800 yards receiving, still good season for Cooper Cup. But I just told
Okay.
somebody to target him in fantasy football, so
Yeah, there you
I
go.
am sending mixed analysis here.
There you go. So that takes care of our offense. We'll do defense if we have time after the interview with Adam. But if Adam is ready to go, we can go ahead and
Yeah, let me give him
Adam.
a proper introduction here. He is
Yes.
the Rams beat reporter for the OC Register, LA Daily News, and all the Southern California News Group newspapers. Former colleague. He is doing a fantastic job on the beat. When I was covering the Rams in 2022, I was doing poorly there. And then Adam comes in from the USC beat and takes off and does well. So Adam, a new father. He took the time to join us here on House of Horns. Let's bring in Adam Grosbard of the OC Register.
There you go.
What's up,
And
guys? Gilberto, you were doing such a terrible job. They gave you a national job. So thank you very much for that introduction.
I don't know why. I think they just want to get rid of me. And hey, here's a job opening. Go ahead and take it. But Adam, how's the beat treating you the last 2 years?
Beat's been good. It's been a nice change from the college game, especially some of the weirder things about covering USC. You just kind of never know what you're in for any given day over there. And it's been fun covering the Rams so far.
I don't know if I should put you in the spot, Adam, but are you liking the pro game better than all the NIL stuff and the recruiting and the college coaches and Lincoln Riley getting in trouble with some reporters every now and then?
I didn't have to write a single story about like Puka Nakua's big sponsorship summer. Like so much better than like tracing down like some odd dollars that an offense. No, it's nice to be, and it's just nice to be working with, to be building relationships and stuff like that. College coaches coaches, not just Lincoln, but like college coaches in general can be very standoffish with media, and it doesn't really build like a working relationship in a lot of instances. So I've been enjoying working with
Okay.
programs.
That is good to know, Adam. And maybe one more question, because I don't know, but I'm kind of getting tired of people saying, "Oh, they're playing the college football video game. NCAA is back. This and that." Are you playing, or don't care?
I pulled it out.
Okay, there you go.
I got into it.
But you're not like tweeting about it every single day like some people, or are you? I don't know.
I mean, I don't have a lot to tweet about. So
Besides the rest.
Well, I don't have enough time to like play online, so there's no one I need to be trash talking. If I win or lose, it's against the computer. So that's just, it's humbling in its own way.
Okay, all right, yeah, I like you, Adam. So if you want to tweet about NCAA football, go ahead. But I'm tired of hearing about people taking LSU or Oregon to the national championship, whatever. But yeah.
No, you got to do it with the smaller programs, anyways. Like,
yeah, right.
That's what I've seen.
Yeah, you don't want to take USC all the way to the national championship game there. But Adam, to talk some Rams here real quick. I know you're still busy with, you got the Rams, doing the scrimmage with the Texans. There's a preseason finale, so we won't take too much of your time. I'll ask 2 questions here, and then I'll let Victor get in here. But just to start off, and people want to know about Matthew Stafford, he did return to practice. I think I saw 11 on 11. I'm following you on Twitter, or X as they call it there. But are you expecting to see Stafford out there in Houston against C.J. Stroud and this joint scrimmage here?
I'm not sure about the joint scrimmage. He's traveling for sure. They're not totally sure. They, want to avoid the, just as Sean calls it, the unscripted movements, where you're trying to sidestep a pass rush or whatever it is. And Stafford is a competitive guy. He will do competitive things in practice. He was diving for a tipped ball against the Cowboys.
Yeah.
He took off for a run yesterday at practice, much to Sean's chagrin. So I think it's possible they tried to protect him, but maybe they feel like after his partial practice yesterday that he might be ready. Just soft tissue injuries. Who knows?
Yeah, Victor and I have been discussing. I think it's probably better to keep him safe there and just avoid an injury so close to the season. But Adam, go ahead.
Especially you have like 60% of the starting offensive line isn't playing.
Yeah.
Jonah Jackson has started doing some stuff, but he's definitely not going to be an 11 on 11. And Alaric and Rob haven't even gotten out there. So
yeah, good thing is that a real game, because imagine Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. going up against those tackles there. And we were just telling people, hey, this backup plan is not the worst, but now when I think about it that way, I don't know.
They're not the worst, but like they're still, they're getting calloused, as they like to say. They're not calloused yet.
How about, kind of a 2-parter here for me, and then I'll let Victor get in here. Update on Puka Nacua, and then with him being out, how has that really helped out the young guys like Jordan Whittington, who seems to be maybe it seems like a reach, but the next Puka Nacua, maybe the next DeMarcus Robinson, somewhere in the middle, we'll figure it out. But helping out the young guys like that, and then maybe Xavier Smith being a roster bubble guy who's really emerged here in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, so it's definitely been good for Xavier and Tyler Johnson, for that matter. They've gotten some more first-team reps and gotten to work with that offense and kind of make their case. I'm not sure still, like, if they're going to go 6 receivers, 7 receivers. There's still some flexibility. They're going to only need to take 3 tight ends because Higbee's on PUP. So that gives them an option there. But so we'll see what happens there. Puka, I've seen moving around. He's starting to do some field work. He's not doing even plyometrics with the team yet, but he's working with trainers off to the sideline, which we didn't see a lot of like the first week after he injured the knee. So I think it seems like he's progressing. They're going to be very deliberate and slow with him. They don't feel a need to rush him back. He's a guy who plays a lot of snaps. So the more you can preserve his body, the better. Jordan Whittington has, Puka was never going to play in the preseason. So Jordan was always going to get those snaps that he did, but he has done some really nice stuff with that. the confluence of events that had to happen for Puka, right?
Yeah.
Like Cooper had to be hurt, which otherwise Puka maybe plays like 10 snaps in that season opener last year. So because Cooper's hurt, Van Jefferson is there as the veteran, but he's not, you're hoping he can have a breakout year under those circumstances. Obviously didn't happen. And then Tutu's more of like a change of speed guy. So it really opened the door for Puka to do a lot of things. You would need a similar confluence of events for Whittington to get that opportunity this year. Maybe next year, like or maybe even late in this year, like maybe he starts taking some snaps from Demarcus Robinson. I think they definitely see him as someone who can contribute at some point. Do they need him to contribute quickly? He's probably the fourth receiver at this point. He'll get some snaps, but Demarcus just gets open, man. You're just seeing it in practice right now. Like him and Stafford are just on like a very special wavelength, and he's been doing a little bit more stretch the field type stuff than Cooper has during these early practices. Cooper's been mostly working in his, ball possession type of role in the short and intermediate. So I think Demarcus has a pretty nice defined role for this offense. So Whittington will get some snaps. Maybe he comes on strong at the end of the year, but I'm not sure that he's going to be like a week one contributor.
Adam, you talked about opening the door. For me, I think someone that you wrote about in your latest story there, in terms of from Tuesday's practice, was Bo Limmer, and him taking first team reps there. Do you see an opening there for him to kind of start the season at center, and then because Jonah Jackson might not be ready? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think they're trying to give him some opportunities. I think there's a little bit of scarring from Gilberto's season on the field.
Yes.
That happened in
Even I feel it, Adam.
Yeah, 100. I mean, it got dark around there, is what everyone always says, just like the way that offensive line. So I think they're doing some cross training. They're letting Limmer get comfortable. They're letting Steve kind of knock off the dust there at left guard a little bit after he's been working at center for most of camp. They've been pretty happy with Zach Thomas, and Zach Thomas has had a really good preseason too, as well as Warren McClendon. Joe Noteboom hasn't played in the preseason. He's only been in joint practices because he's a vet and his role is pretty defined. But they've been happy with Zach Thomas. They've been happy with Bo Limmer. They've been happy with Warren McClendon so far. So they feel pretty good about the depth there on the offensive line. I think for Limmer, like they're very happy. I think it would be a pretty dark situation if they had to like trust center to a rookie 6th round pick. It would have to be like a real just series of disasters to get to that point. But I do think, they like him and they feel like he's a really good depth piece moving forward for them.
Yeah. And then the other question I had for you was in terms of how surprised was the release of Jerry Jacobs, and then what does that do for does that open up the door for someone who was on the bubble in that secondary to make the team now?
Yeah, I was a little surprised. It felt like he was kind of trending towards being the 4th cornerback on the team. They wanted a veteran, and he, used to play for Aubrey Pleasant in Detroit, so he has some real comfort with the defense and the verbiage and everything else. So they felt like he was someone who could come in and contribute right away. So I was a little surprised by that. It's going to be really interesting to see what decisions they make in the secondary, because they are mostly playing safeties at the star cornerback right now. It's Russ Yeast. Quinnen Lake's the starter. Russ Yeast and Jalen McCullough have been really competing for that second job. So maybe they decide to keep both of those guys, Yeast and McCullough. Maybe they decide to keep both of those and keep another cornerback. I don't know. Maybe that's Jason Taylor. We'll see. But it does it adds a little stakes for those secondary guys heading into this last preseason game.
Gilbert?
Adam, with Victor asking about the defense, I want to stick to the defensive side, and maybe we haven't seen too much of them because they're not playing the preseason. But what have you seen from Jared Verse and Braden Fisk? And obviously, we all want to see that defensive front, life after Aaron Donald. You got the big four, hopefully the big four with Byron Young and Kobe Turner. But I'll put you on the spot too. Is one playing better than the other? Because I keep seeing good reviews on Braden Fisk there. But just those two guys, what have you seen from them in camp?
I think Fisk has like won his matchups a little bit more than Verse has so far. Um, I don't know what that means in terms of development. I mean, they were only taking like 20 spots apart, so they're like pretty comparable in
Yeah.
terms of like the draft and all that. They both have looked really good though, especially against the Cowboys. They both had some really good moments. Fisk looked like just like a game wrecker against the Chargers, but it's hard to know what to make of that offense right now. Um, yeah, so
Yeah, it's not good.
it's not been great. I wish I were in Houston to see, because that's going to be a really good test for those two guys. But they both seem like they're going to be ready to contribute pretty immediately. The defensive front's going to be really different this year. I was talking with Bobby Brown about this a couple of days ago, and he was talking about it like it feels like they're in college again, because last year you knew AD was going to play like 85 to 90% of snaps, and he was going to do it all at the 3 or 4 tech. So you didn't really have to focus on that position because you knew most of those snaps were going to AD. Now they're really all going to have to contribute, however many defensive linemen that they keep. They're going to keep a nice rotation going there at outside linebacker, but it seems like Verse and Fisk are going to have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how it plays out. And part of me feels like people are overlooking the Aaron Donald thing, but then you see, the depth that they're building, and especially the way Kobe Turner played last year, the way that Chris Shula has talked about Kobe Turner, how he's going to be used to, get matchups that are favorable for him, the way Aaron Donald will use, and that says a lot if you're going to get matchups like that. So, we'll see how that plays out there for Verse and Fisk. But I'm very curious, and maybe I'm going back and forth, but I'm going back to the offense. I just want to see how this tandem looks with and another tandem, because Fisk and Verse are one. But Corum and Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams, we know that he's had the injury issues. His rookie year, the year I was there, he got hurt on the opening kickoff. Last year, he got hurt for about 4 games. But the difference last year, they really needed him to, be a dynamic offense. He comes back, they pick it up right away. And now they get Blake Corum, which is a little bit of a surprise pick there. But I thought it was a good one because of Kyren Williams' injury history. He's going technically into a contract year because he's not a first-round pick. So this dynamic here with Corum and Williams, how do you see it playing out? You think they could complement each other, because they're also a little similar, body types, skill set, things like that. But I guess, how do you see that playing out?
So Kyron's going into year 3. So this is like a year where he could try to position himself for an extension. We'll see. Corum. So like, I thought that was interesting on draft night when they drafted Corum, and Sean was talking about how similar a lot of the things that Kyren does, Corum does. I'm wondering, as you're seeing a trend of teams valuing their first string running back less, that there's also a trend of valuing your second string running back more, because like if you fear injury at the position, then you really need a good insurance policy. And Kyren, unfortunately, just his history does require you to think about that. So I thought it was interesting that they got someone who has a lot of similarities in terms of his running style. He's aggressive, but he waits for his blocks. Really, really good inside the 10. Can catch the ball out of the backfield. They both have looked really good in camp so far. It seems like they're working well together. It's a good running back room, like even beyond them. Like Ronnie Rivers was a really good backup last year, and he just happened to get hurt the same day that Kyren did, and go on the IR too. And then Boston Scott's had a really good preseason, and they like him in that return role. He might actually have a role in that capacity for them this year. So it's a good room. I think that they're both going to get a lot of work. I think Kyren's still the guy. But he's never going to be the 90-95% of snaps that he was prior to his ankle injury last year. They're just not going to do that to his body again, because like you said, Gilberto, like they really just were a different team when he came back from that injury. Like the energy he brought to that offense is just night and day. So they can't afford to have that happen again. And if it does, at least they have Corum, who is still someone who can keep the ball moving.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna ask you in terms of last season. This team, there wasn't. This was your first year covering the team, and there wasn't a lot of expectation with the Rams. And then now, after the signings and the draft this season, what is a reasonable, like right now everybody's predicting stuff, they're coming up with predictions,
Yeah.
but for you, as a B reporter, what's a reasonable expectation for this Rams team? Because you even have someone like Tom Brady saying that they can challenge the Kansas City Chiefs as someone that can dethrone them. So
Wow.
what is a reasonable expectation? Because I think a lot of fans are coming, yeah, like we cover the Rams on here, but we just want to know in terms of
Yeah.
the outside, like we are locked into this team. So what's a reasonable expectation to really have on this team?
I didn't know that Brady quote. That's news to me. That is high praise. That's
Yeah,
interesting. Um, I'd be surprised if they're that team this year. I just don't know. Like they lost Aaron Donald.
yeah,
Like the offense should be better. Like Jonah Jackson is an improvement for that offensive line. Like Coleman Shelton was great, but this is a completely different body type to reinforce that offensive line. Puka is going to be a year older. Cooper seems healthy. DeMarcus is like already has chemistry with Stafford, Kyron, and Corum, like we just talked about. Parkinson has looked really, really good, and Davis Allen is a capable pass catching tight end until Higbee gets back. Um, that offense is going to be really good. I have no idea what this defense is going to be. They feel like they got better in certain places. They got different caliber veterans in the secondary. They brought Darius Williams back. They brought in Tre'Davious White. They feel like those guys can be really stabilizing forces for them. But like, just how much can you expect from those young guys? Like, I like Kobe Turner and Byron Young a lot. I think that they both work really hard and they're going to figure out whatever this next step in their development is. But it's going to be an adjustment without Aaron Donald. They're playing a second place schedule this year instead of a third place. It's not terribly tough, but so I think they're a wild card team. Like I'm very, especially in the NFC, like Stafford is still a top 3 quarterback in the NFC. Like I don't care. Like it's him, it's Goff, and it's Jalen Hurts, and like really, I don't. No one else really comes close to those 3 as far as I'm concerned in the NFC. Maybe Jordan Love does this year, but so I think that they're definitely a wild card team. Maybe this is the year for the Niners that, the top heavy roster comes back to bite them and they can sneak into a division team. Just depends. I don't know what this defense is going to be. I genuinely just don't know until we see that first game against a very good offense in the Lions, a much better offense than the Seahawks were in Week 1 last year.
yeah.
yeah.
And then
So
my last question for you, Adam. This was historically one of the worst special teams
Yeah,
that we've ever seen in the NFL. I think it was like ranked 8th all time in terms of how bad it was. Just from seeing, you know, training camp and now preseason, do they just need to be average to be good enough?
yeah.
We have Josh Carty, you have good return guys. How do you see the special teams working out this year?
Cardi definitely stabilizes kicking a lot. Like that's going to be a big deal. Um, they still kind of need to figure out how to cover Ethan Evans' punts. Like he's really strong, but just the coverage is still, it was still preseason, so who knows, but it still just isn't quite there. Um, I think last year's special teams had 2 factors, right? Like Chase Blackburn was first year as special teams coordinator, so he's still figuring out like the rhythms of the team and things like that. So there's still a bit of a transition period. Also, I think last year where it really showed the youth and the lack of depth on the Rams roster, because they made so many salary cap sacrifices last year. And I think that lack of depth, really showed up in the special teams. There were a lot of guys who just, undrafted free agents or guys who aren't on the roster anymore, who had to fill roles there. I think they'll have a deeper roster. We're going to have to see how it translates once it's on the field, though.
A lot of insight there from Adam Grosbard. You got special teams conversation here. Look at that, Adam. You're bringing all the insight and the nuggets here because you are the best beat reporter. Yeah, you've been the best Rams beat reporter, the OC Register, for the last 3 years, man. So I'm giving you credit for that, Adam. And 2022, man, it was a rough year. I keep bringing it up, and I'm glad you brought it up too. I went through a lot there. It's like a recovery team here somewhere. Yeah. I'm the president of the team there for 2022. I see Kevin and Jordan and Sarah every now and then. But Adam, I started. It's not really a question, but I'm going to let you go with this. I started by asking you about NCAA college football, the video game. You went to SMU, fitting that you cover the Rams. Eric Dickerson went to SMU there back in the day. Are you playing with SMU when you're playing this video game here that people like to play?
Yeah, I am. Like they're the perfect caliber, right? Like they're the first year in a new conference. They still kind of need to build up their roster.
Yeah, it fits.
That conference, like it's a good stepping stone team. I think I think my next one, just because I really like the stadium, I might try to do something with Oregon State. Like I just really like that home environment. But
okay, Beavers.
Water.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, you're not picking Alabama. You're not gonna steamroll people with Ohio State. I like this approach here because SMU needs to win every now and then. So I like that, Adam.
And then with Oregon State, one of two remaining Pac-12 teams.
Oh yeah, they're still barely.
Well, they will let you play with the conferences if you want to. You can realign everything. So we'll see. We'll see what I decide to do with that.
The Pac-2 not doing well, but you know who's doing much better? Adam Grosbard of the OC Register, Rams beat reporter. Adam, thank you for joining us and dropping the knowledge and dropping the heat. We really appreciate it, man.
Thank
you, Adam. I mean, there we go.
Awesome. That was great from Adam.
Yeah, that was awesome, honestly. Let me fix this up for us here, and then there we go. All right, Gilbert, just to finish up here, that was really good. What were your biggest takeaways from what Adam had to tell us there?
Yeah, I really liked that he kept saying, like, I don't know what to expect from the Rams defense. And yeah, that's not really an answer, but it's true. And this is and it started reminding me of why I feel like people are overlooking the Aaron Donald thing, because if you think about it, they are best set up to succeed in the defensive front, which is weird because you're missing the all-time greatest defensive tackle. Because you have Kobe Turner, you have Byron Young, you drafted Jerry Burns, you drafted Braden Fisk, and it felt like, okay, well, they seem good, but then you're focusing on the inside linebacker. Like if you lose Ernest Jones, you're pretty much screwed there at the position because you don't have any depth there, anybody else to stand out. The secondary has a little more names there because you brought in Tre'Davious White, you brought in Darius Williams, you brought in Cam Curl. Adam mentioned there's an abundance of safeties there, so you could probably get by with that. But cornerback could be one of their weak points if those guys aren't healthy and ready to go. And like, is Tre'Davious White, if he is healthy, is he still that same guy from Buffalo? That's tough to do, to turn back the clock in the NFL. Same thing with Darius Williams. When you bring back an old player, like you're going back to an ex, it never really works out. So, if there's somebody that steps up there, to be a young player that does well, I don't know, but at least at safety, they seem much better with depth. So safety, defensive front is okay, but linebacker, inside linebacker, that is, cornerback is a lot of concerns. And then, the DC is not Raheem Morris, and Raheem Morris has a track record of doing a great job, even when teams are not talented, like last year, of course. Chris Shula has been around the game for a while, but he's never actually been a defensive coordinator in the NFL, so that's going to be the concern. So, again, Victor, one day I really like the Rams, and one day I'm just very concerned for the LA Rams. Like, but obviously because I covered that 2022 season, I keep talking about it, and we've seen Sean McVay have some rough years, maybe not to the extent of 2022, but I think 2019 they missed the playoffs, and so. There are some years they missed the playoffs, but I think Sean McVay is one of the best coaches in the NFL where you could be a consistent winner and be consistently in the playoffs. I like the core group that they have last year. But going back to what Adam said, the defense is a mystery. You never know what injuries in the league. I know that quarterback rankings are not as good in the NFC, but I think there are a lot of very good teams in the NFC. I think even in the division, you might have said this, Victor, like
Yeah.
just being around the Cardinals and the Seahawks, they might be some, feisty sleeper teams. And then obviously you got the 49ers. So it's not even easy in the division.
Yeah, and I mean, part of the reason the Seahawks fired Pete Carroll was because Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan beat the brakes off of him, and he couldn't figure it out. And they're like, the reason you're here is because you're a defensive guy, and so they brought in one of the best ones that punched with the Baltimore Ravens, who punched the 49ers in the mouth. Now, you know we saw Sean McVay, do a really good job in Baltimore there in that game. That's one of the best games of the year that people talk about. So maybe he has an answer for it, but you know, one of the things that people always forget, and we've had this conversation lately, Gilbert, is that people forget the turnover that every year happens with the NFL. That's just the way it is. And people always look back, remember what they last saw and think, okay, well, we saw these 14 teams make the playoffs, so those automatically that means we're going to put them back in the playoffs. That's not how the NFL works. The NFL every year is a new season, and so that's why I ask. I'm like, what is a reasonable, season for kind of expectation for this Rams team? Because I'm with you. I have a lot of concerns, not just with the injuries, as you said. He even Adam talked about. He said, when he mentioned you in terms of, the injuries, we saw what happened 2 years ago, and that's why. But it goes beyond that for me. The concern is with the secondary, and I know we had someone we talked about it earlier in terms of they left a comment saying there's a lot more depth on this team in certain positions. There are, like we talked about with the offensive line, we talked about with the receivers. Yes, there's great depth there now, but defensively in that secondary, you know, I have my doubts there, and that's where I part of the problem with not seeing a lot of these players during the preseason is that we can't judge what's going to happen. I might, throw a dart out there and say, yeah, like this team is going to be better than last season, but you could still end up 9-8. Like you could still have more talent, Gilbert,
Yeah.
and it's just the way things break. Like one of the reasons I liked this team a lot last season, and I told you right off the bat, was because how that schedule finished up, and it went that way where once they got Kyron Williams, this team took off, and they finished 5-1 in their last 6 games. And kind of we'll preview this and we'll preview the season as we go forward, but that's my main concern with this team is, you know, um, as of right now, that's where I'm at, and I'm glad Adam touched on a lot of those things, especially with special teams. I feel much better about the special teams, and as he talked about, that was the first year with Shea Blackburn, and so you like I said, I think all you really need from this team to be better. Like this team made the playoffs. That's the other thing that I forget about. This team made the playoffs, Gilbert, having the eighth worst special teams crew
Yeah.
in NFL history. If you can get this special teams crew to be, average, league average, imagine what that can do for this Rams team this season.
Yeah, and before I go back to the surprises of surprise teams of the NFL, one thing obviously I learned last year, and I feel like I'm always learning something about the NFL. And that's the beauty about the NFL. It's just there's something different. Like if you're caught up on last year's trend, your predictions are going to be terrible because there's always something new. But one thing
True.
I realized, at least from last year, is, don't get caught up on slow starts and say the Rams defense sucks against the Detroit Lions in Detroit against a team that has a lot of consistency, a lot of veteran players, a lot of talent, and they get lit up because we don't understand this defense just yet. Well, look at last year because they had a slow start and they figured it out. Again, don't fall into what last year was or the old trends, but they are long seasons. That's something I got to keep reminding myself of for this team, especially a team that has some moving parts on defense. If they come out offensively and they're not good, then that's a concern because they should have be more familiar, more chemistry offensively. You got Matt LaFleur back, Sean McVay is there, obviously. So the defense will maybe give them a little more leeway there. But going back to the surprise teams in the NFL, and I'll give you a little bit of a preview of mine. My bracket will come out at SI probably the week leading up to week 1 of the NFL. But I looked up and I'm like, oh crap, I got 7 new teams in the playoffs that didn't make it last year. And that felt like a lot. I think last year I got 5. I always want to get 5, but 7 felt like way too much to me. But at the end of the day, I said, you just never know. Like, I was very harsh on the Rams last year and they surprised me. And I go back to when I was in Denver last week, and Sean Payton, it's going to be coach speak, and it's going to be being positive and making sure your players believe in it. But he just kept saying, we're young and we're dangerous. And
Yeah.
he kept pointing to the Rams and the Packers, and he kept saying, yeah, you could be young, you could be dangerous, but if you don't have that quarterback, you might not be that dangerous team. So Matthew Stafford helped out a young roster. Jordan Love ascending so quickly helped out a young roster. Sean Payton is hoping Bo Nix could do that for his young rosters. We still got
Stroud.
CJ Stroud. So if you have that quarterback and your rosters are a little suspect and up and down, a little young, and your coaching staff is young too, if you have that quarterback, you're always going to have a chance. And the Rams have it with Matthew Stafford. So the Seahawks, I don't believe in Geno Smith, per se, and also a rookie head coach and Mike McDonald. But I like Mike McDonald's scheme in Seattle. But I go back to Arizona more in the NFC West because they have a Kyler Murray. I know people are up and down about, but he's had flashes of being a good quarterback. And I like the Cardinals this year because I really like the OC and Drew Petzing, and all they brought in Marvin Harrison. Last year, Puka Nacua was a rookie guy. So always look out for those teams who have an established quarterback with an emerging offense, because at the end of the day, this league is all about scoring points and favoring the offense. So I just see that with Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams, but obviously rookie quarterbacks are harder to figure out. For every CJ Stroud, you get 5 Paxton Lynch. So you just never know. But to put a bonus conversation, it's like nothing's a given every year. But the good thing for the Rams, they do have Matthew Stafford.
And they have Sean McVay. And I thought, kind of continue on with this conversation, Gilbert. I think it was Fernando when you guys were talking to Eric D. Williams the other day, and they were talking about quarters, and I think Fernando talked about the fact that a lot of the coaches who are former players, they talk about looking at the season in terms of quarters. You have the first quarter, which is the first 4 games. Then you have the second quarter, which is the next 4 games, which is, games 5 through 8. And then you go 9 through whatever, 14. And then, on to, the last 5 games there of the season. And that's the last quarter there. And I think that's a good way to looking at it, because, I think, we'll get into it when we preview the season for the Rams in a couple, and right in, when we do the preview against the Lions, because you got to look at those first 4 games. You got to get off to a good start. You don't want to have the same situation where you're having to rely on other teams late in the season to get into the playoffs, and then by week 17 you've already clinched it. So I think it's really big for, like, as you talked about with the defense, kind of, hey, let's wait and see what happens with Chris Shula as he implements his, we see more blitzing. Do we see, how does this team how is it different? I know I've heard, from some players, just, reading some quotes from Adam, from Jordan, from Gary, and they're talking about how much different it is in terms of it's a little bit more aggressive. I've heard guys like Kirk Morrison, the Marco Farr, talk about that they're expecting more blitzing from this team, to be more aggressive than what we saw from Raheem Morris. So I think for that first quarter, those first 4 games, that's what I'm going to be looking for, is how does Chris Shula change up his defense, and then how does he go from there into the second, third, and fourth quarter of the season.
Yeah, and I know we're still early for the week 1 preview, but all eyes are going to be on Chris Shula's defense, how he operates, how the young guys do. I think we know what to expect with the Rams offense. Maybe the mystery there is, how do you utilize Kyron Williams and Blake Corum? I'm sure scheme wise, Jonah Jackson and Steve Avila is going to be a little bit of a change, but for the most part, that offense is intact there, and we've seen it last year. So the defense is going to be the biggest sign there, and honestly, when Adam brought up the Seattle Seahawks from in his interview from the Week 1 victory last year, I'm pretty sure they won that game, but it was like a close game,
Yes.
right? And it's really surprised everybody, like, oh crap, like the Seahawks are supposed to be the better team because they made the playoffs a year ago. You don't
Yeah.
want to be the Seahawks of 2023 when you were supposed to be the one making the playoffs after you
Yeah.
made it. So things like that to look out. But when you have Detroit off the bat, it's gonna be tough. But that was such a telling sign when they were feisty and competitive, like, oh, this team could definitely compete. So maybe they come up short, but they're hanging strong against Jared Goff and all his weapons there. That could be a telling sign too. You just never know. We always say, well, how did you look at the end of the year? But then the Week 1 was such a big indicator, like, damn, Puka Nacua is going to be very good because he was very good that Week 1 game.
Yeah, and we talked about it when we previewed that game. I still remember. I mean, I think you were surprised that I picked the Rams, and I just had no faith in Seattle. Especially when we talked about the same discussion we're having right now. It was the same thing in terms of, look, people always forget the fact that with the turnover and what happens, the injuries with the Seahawks at the time, and then eventually it caught up to them, and it wasn't I don't I know that you're not a big fan of Geno Smith, but I still don't think he was the reason why they weren't as good or why they didn't meet expectations last season. I think that offensive line was pretty bad,
Yeah.
and it's hard to do anything, especially get the ball. But those
They'll be better
as you
defensively. I'll say that for sure. I liked what I saw from Mike McDonald. I did take notice of that.
Yeah, and then with the Cardinals, as you talked about, I think that's one of those teams that I'm also very high after you talked about it. But being there last season in training camp, I told you I really like how they approach things. They're really, um, really structured. I like that structure with Jonathan Gannon and their GM. And as you talked about, you made a great point in terms of the quarterback and the offensive coordinator. I think that is a huge thing to have. I heard Rich Eisen, I know we got to go pretty soon, but I heard Rich Eisen saying that he loves having a head coach attached to his quarterback that is an offensive guy, kind of like what the Rams have with Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. But at the same time, I'm like, I disagree with him a little bit. Just I rather have an offensive coordinator attached to the quarterback, a really good one, like we see with Ben Johnson and Jared Goff. And I think Dan Campbell is perfect for that team in terms of coaching. I think if you have a really good offensive coordinator, you can go a long way. And I think that's where my point goes with the Cardinals and why I think I wouldn't sleep on the Cardinals this season. I know there's
Yeah.
not a lot of expectations from a lot of the media members, but I'm glad at least you're seeing it because, like I said, there's so much turnover every year, and people forget about that.
Defensively, I worry about them, but again, Jonathan Gannon is not a rookie head coach like Mike McDonald. There's a lot going on. Your rookie head coach here. Jonathan Gannon has the scheme, has the coaches there. Maybe some guys who are not cornerstone pieces just play their butt off, and they have Buda Baker, and that's in terms of names that that's about it. But they have some young guys that are emerging. So if the defense figures it out, they'll be okay. But offensively, I think they're going to be very good there. But we do know that the Rams have had Arizona's number for the last few years. But I'm just excited for the NFC West because part of me did want to give the Seattle Seahawks a nudge there. And yeah, I'm not high on Geno Smith. I also have question marks about the offensive line, but they have so much talent defensively. They couldn't get on the same page. I think they will with Mike McDonald, even though he's a rookie head coach. And I do like that the OC that they brought in from the college game, which I think is a good idea sometimes to bring these innovative coaches. So
It's Grub, right?
yeah,
Grub.
Grubb.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on the first name, but yeah, he was coaching in Washington, not too far, obviously being in Seattle. But yeah, maybe for the next show or the week, we could break down the NFC West because they are very four intriguing teams in there.
Yeah, and we'll get into all that. Our next show it will be on Monday. Our live show. We're gonna kind of give our projection of the 53-man roster. I'll ask Gilbert in terms of our over unders for stats. We'll we'll tackle. We didn't get to the tight ends. We'll do special teams and we'll do the defense. So make sure you're locked in for on August 26th. We'll be back. We'll have a live show. But this was great, Gilbert. Getting, we've now had Gary on. We've had Eric D. Williams, and now we have Adam as well. Unless I'm forgetting somebody, I'm sorry. This off season, but it's been a good off season. I'm ready to preview Lions Rams, but we need to get to that 53-man projection. Can't wait for that, Gilbert. But that was an awesome get for you. Adam was great, and he gave us a lot of nuggets, and I can't wait to repost or cut this the interview and have it for everybody tomorrow.
Yeah, shout out to Adam Grosbard from the OC Register for jumping on and giving us 20 25 minutes. A little late for him because he's also a first-time dad and the baby is still young, and he had to put the baby to bed, and he had made time for us. So we really appreciate that and just hearing the knowledge there. So yeah, obviously we can't get a guest every single week, but we're gonna aim to get a good amount of guests, and hopefully you enjoyed that. Let us know in the comments of the replay and also of the clip out when we post this probably tomorrow.
Yep. Can't wait. And what are we? We got 2 more Sundays to go. We got this Sunday, then Labor Day Sunday, and then we get Thursday night football with Kansas City and the Baltimore Ravens, and then the Rams begin their season on the road in Detroit against the Lions, which is going to be a great matchup. We'll have previews for that. We'll let you guys know what our schedule is going to be in terms of when we're gonna go on live. For sure, we're gonna be on right after the game against the Lions. But in terms of leading up, when we do our preview and all that, we'll let you guys know. The episode before that week. So stay tuned, and we'll have all that. But Gilbert, we've done a good hour and 10 minutes. We gave people a lot of good content. So we hope, and thanks. Shout out to everybody who was in the comments here. We got Steve on, who was driving. We have Angel Salcedo. We have Don Caldeon, our stream chef from Detroit, who joined us late in the season during that playoff game, and he stayed on and subscribed. And then Jorge Rodriguez says Gilberto, and
what's
then
up, Jorge?
says, and we love you, Gilberto. So a shout out from a Chargers fan there. So it's good to see people on here from other teams as well. So we really enjoy that. So Gilbert, that's all I have for you. It's time for us to go.
Yeah, let's get out of here. And one more week of the preseason. So close to being done with that. But again, another good show. And as always, let us know in the comments if you're enjoying it. And if you don't like it, that's cool too. Let us know in the comments. But on that note, ya nos vamos. Pues, vámonos.